You know, when Bad Creepypasta covered the story Instant Death Disease back in 2015, I thought that was the pinnacle of literary stupidity. We've engineered a disease that's so deadly that saying its name will vaporize your organs is leaps and bounds dumber than essentially anything else that has appeared in any other creepypasta. An intern watching an episode of SpongeBob before it airs, or a bottle of vodka burning down a forest immediately after a torrential downpour seems plausible in comparison. Well, to my dismay, I'd like to announce there is a new champion of stupidity. One that makes Instant Death Disease look like a high quality documentary. Giraffes are no longer my favorite animal is, without a doubt, the stupidest piece of media that has ever been written. Let me clarify. That's not saying it's the worst story ever written. There's thankfully no unconsensual giraffe sex scenes or anything. And it's not the worst written story ever. The grammar and spelling are passable. Frankly, they're great by creepypasta standards. But honestly, the best writers in history, Tolkien, Shakespeare, Twain, couldn't turn this hunk of nonsensical dog shit into literary gold. In fact, the fact that it's well written only makes it more embarrassing. An adult wrote this. Someone with a grasp of English as a language sat down and wrote this story. So what's wrong with this story? What makes this story so stupid that it makes a girl dodging bullets after major surgery look completely realistic by comparison? Well, let's go over the story itself before talking about why it doesn't make any fucking sense. It should be pretty obvious though, so without further ado, let's get right into it. So the story starts off with our generic white bread narrator explaining that he's always been a fan of giraffes, much like everyone else. Or at least he was before the experience he had in Africa only a short while ago. He spends the first bit of the story reminiscing about the time he and his family went to one of those drive-through zoos and how he met a giraffe there. This scene also is here to remind us that zoos exist, which I'll talk about later. He gives a couple giraffe fun facts before time skipping to his college days. We're informed that our protagonist was an intern for a research team and that he went with them to Africa to study the wildlife there. How this bumbling chimp man managed to get said internship is beyond me, probably some kind of nepotism. But regardless, he winds up in Africa and by his own account has a terrible time doing coffee runs and shoveling shit, I assume. But is at the very least thankful that he gets to see the animals. And having read this story multiple times, let me tell you, it definitely doesn't stay that way. So anywho, the author tells us about how one night while all the other researchers were asleep, which seems kinda odd given how many animals in Africa are nocturnal, the author is up. He's probably jacking off, which is a point I'll explore later, sadly, until he hears a grunting sound off in the distance. He just assumes it's some guy snoring until he correctly recognizes it as a giraffe. So he goes out to investigate the noise, but not before grabbing a flashlight. Sorry, did I say flashlight? I meant to say fuel rod cannon from Halo, because apparently these flashlights are powerful enough to melt plastic if they're pointed at them long enough. Afterwards, he heads out into the African savannah at night by himself. Why doesn't he grab someone else to come with him, so he's not alone in possibly the most dangerous place outside of the Middle East? I don't know, honestly. From a writing and realistic perspective, it doesn't make any sense. And the only explanation the author gives is that giraffes aren't aggressive animals. But that doesn't really account for the dozens of other creatures, most of which have some form of camouflage, that wouldn't care about being friendly. This is the first really dumb thing in this story, but trust me, it won't be the last. This schmuck goes out with his fuel rod cannon into what is certainly an episode of When Animals Attack in the Making to look for some humming giraffes. He finds one of them making the noise standing next to a tree and discovers it has a bunch of scratches along its leg. At first he feels bad because apparently this guy who is so into animals that he flew halfway across the planet to look at them but didn't prepare himself to see animals get hurt. This next line kills me. I was so upset that such a gentle creature was attacked. But it wasn't surprising, not until I found the culprit laying at its feet. Which implies that the giraffe being attacked was now unbelievably shocking. And it's not like the giraffe was attacked by a skinwalker or the Ray ripoff number 381 like every other Reddit story. The attacker was a lion, which is like the main animal I'd imagine attacking a giraffe. It's just funny to me, man. But yeah, the dude sees a lion that looks like it just said the N-word in Chicago laying next to the giraffe's feet. which isn't completely unheard of. Giraffes are incredibly powerful animals, so one beating the shit out of an attacking lion isn't unheard of. The lion being there also kind of confirms the point that I made earlier about how stupid it was for this dipshit to go out to look at giraffes because he didn't notice it until it was literally right in front of him. What happens next is, well, the giraffe kneels down next to the lion and, I'm not even kidding, unhinges its jaw and swallows the lion whole. Yep, just scarfs him down like how an average Reddit user inhales chicken tenders. Now, I don't need to explain to you why this is both borderline brain dead and also not really scary. I will later, of course. But for now, let's just move on because, as silly as it sounds, this isn't the pinnacle of the story's retardation. So the author is unsurprisingly shocked by this display, probably because he just came to the realization that he's in some shitty creepypasta, and is so focused on the display in front of him, he doesn't notice the 2-ton, 18-foot tall super deer walking up behind him. I'm sorry, did this giraffe take stealth lessons from Godzilla 98? How on earth did the author not notice this thing sneaking up behind him until it was literally breathing down his neck? Whatever. So the second giraffe uses its cool giraffe headbutt move against our protagonist, who's apparently wearing power armor because he doesn't immediately die because of this. Instead, he's just knocked down and kind of paralyzed for a minute, which gives Giraffe 2 the chance to kneel down and start to eat him too. What follows is what I can only describe as 4 paragraphs of horror roar, as the protagonist is swallowed alive by the giraffe. The fact that description is scarier than the actual event in the story says a lot. So anyway, as the protagonist is getting deviant-arted to death, he has a brain blast and remembers he has a flashlight with literal power of the sun inside it. So he grabs it and pushes it up against the side of the giraffe's neck, long enough to burn it so it vomits him back up, which is also probably part of the author's fetish. And that's about where the story ends. Noteworthy stuff, at least. Apparently, after being vomited up, the dude lays in the grass all night, unable to move, which begs the question why a pack of dogs or leopard didn't snatch him up, but whatever. Also, his supervisor sends him back to America. The protagonist says it's because of his injuries, but it's equally likely that the supervisor probably thought he was a nut because he started rambling about his filthy, filthy DeviantArt page. The story wraps up by saying that nature is full of surprises and that there have been times animals have done things humans couldn't imagine they could do, but then fails to give any examples of that. Now, I don't feel like I need to explain why this doesn't make any sense. But I'm a biology nerd, and reading the comments on the post on Reddit and on the Creepy McPasta reading of this story, I need to go in depth into why this story doesn't make any fucking sense. So without further delay, let's get right into it. So let's first address the elephant in the room. The main focus of this story, the idea that giraffes as a species can secretly be apex predators that eat lions and have kept that secret from humanity until this Joe Schmo over here got a front row seat to it, is amazingly stupid on so many levels that I can't even count them. First and foremost, the fact that giraffes have kept this secret from us for so long is simply baffling. The Western world has interacted with giraffes for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and have been kept in captivity since the early 13th century, meaning giraffes have been closely linked with the old world for over 600 years. You'd think in all that time someone, literally anyone, would notice that giraffes have a tendency to beat other creatures to death before eating them whole. Zoos are some of the most surveillance-heavy places in the entire world outside of government buildings and hospitals. So you'd imagine there'd be at least one video of a giraffe eating something like Orga from fucking Godzilla 2000. The author even includes giraffes being in a zoo at the beginning of the story. So it's not like we're in some weird alternate timeline where giraffes are completely obscure mythical creatures. You'd also think a scientist dissecting giraffe would have noticed the acid in its neck, or the fact that it can unhinge its jaw and swallow someone whole. This story isn't about some beetle in the middle of the Amazon rainforest that can hold some weird secrets. This is literally one of the most recognizable and most studied species on the planet. You can't just say, oh yeah, it turns out they're apex predators. It's not even implied that these are like a subspecies or that they're some kind of horrible possessed demons. So all the audience is left to go on is that all giraffes can do this, which is a fucking asinine idea. Let's not even get into the fact that giraffes simply don't have the body plans of apex predators, because if we delve that deep, I'll literally be here for hours explaining why a digitless, long-necked, small-headed creature is almost the exact opposite of a standard apex predator. Now I'm guessing you can see why I believe this story is as stupid, if not stupider, than instant death disease. But now let's cover the story itself and its second biggest flaw. Now, if you were to come up to me dressed as a giraffe and you tried to chase me or something, firstly, I'd think you were high on bath salts. Secondly, I'd probably laugh at you after punching you in the dick, because as much as the author denies it, images of giraffes don't trigger fight or flight responses in the vast majority of humans. That's simply because they're not fucking scary. Now, are they intimidating in real life? To an extent, yes. Anything that's 18 feet tall that can kill you instantly is a bit intimidating. But I'm not going to be kept up at night at the thought of seeing a giant yellow horse in the corner of my room. Frankly, I don't know if there's any less fitting animal out there to write a horror story about. Maybe a seal or something? But at the very least, those have the fact that they're carnivorous going for them. You might be saying to yourself, Bio, that's only giraffes in real life. The giraffes in this story are carnivores that eat people alive. That has to boost their scariness a little bit. To that I say, no. No, it doesn't. For many reasons. The main reasons it doesn't make them scary is because the concept is so silly and idiotic that it distracts the reader from the actual scary part. And the fact the climax of this story is essentially vor porn with a horror twist, which isn't really something scary to begin with, is just kind of gross and makes you feel deeply uncomfortable in a way that the author probably didn't intend. The fact this story makes me conjure images of weird dudes on Tumblr over anything else should be a testament to how much this concept fails. This story wasn't scary from the word go, but as it went on, it somehow managed to devolve into a clusterfuck of non-frightening nonsense. It fails as a horror story, and frankly as a story in general. If I had needed to watch it 5 times in a row to write this script, I probably would have forgotten everything about it, apart from the weird vor shit partway through. I don't see any version of this tale as anything apart from a cesspool of shit. Now with that out of the way, this video is already longer than it probably should be for a story this short and terrible, so let's just swiftly move on and wrap things up. This story is utter dog wash. Even with the alright grammar and spelling like I mentioned at the beginning, the story itself, the concepts and ideas the story contains, are dead on arrival. It's more like the already referenced instant death disease in that regard than something like Clockwork the Killer. All 3 of them are dead on arrival, but this story and instant death disease are at least so stupid they're funny, and besides the vor stuff, is almost completely uncontroversial. The ideas presented in this story are unbelievably idiotic to the point the story is completely unsalvageable, because any cognitive person would and could question the main plot point, and the story unravels from there. It lacks any genuine horror, and is more likely to make you feel confused and mad than it is to scare you. I give it a 3 out of 10, and trust me when I say that 3 is only there because from a grammatical standpoint, it isn't complete ass cancer. If there were more typos and tense swaps, this story would be a 1 out of 10. Bottom of the fucking trash bin. Anyway, that's all for today, folks. Hope to see you guys soon. I got 2 more stories lined up to review after this one, and trust me, they're real stinkers as well. But drop a suggestion down in the comments if you got a story you'd like me to tackle in the near future. All I ask of you is to keep it relatively obscure. No Jeffs or Slenders, please. I want to go through stories not many people have reviewed yet. I'll see you guys next time.